Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. I'm Simon Short. Joining me this week for opening week, week one of the NFL season is of course Josh Limesand. Josh, welcome back in, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. School's underway, football season's underway, and the weather in Minnesota is finally forgot or realized that it's not summer anymore. So we're down in the 60s now, so it feels great. It feels like football. Football's on the horizon. All good.
Yeah, I'm scrambling around trying to find all my hoodies again. I'm checking random stores for hoodies that I've lost in the last like 6 months or so. We'll move on and see how it goes with that. But luckily, I don't have the Minnesota fall and winters to contend with. I'm sure I've got enough sleeves for the Southeast
Sure.
here. It is football season. It is time to do our power rankings as this episode comes out. It will be Thursday night, the first day of the season, where the Eagles will be playing the Cowboys, the Micah Parsons-less Cowboys, of course. If you want a reaction to that podcast still, or to that trade still, Box Score Network YouTube channel. Let me just give a quick shout out right here at the top. We did a reaction video to Micah Parsons there. We talked mostly Cowboys, but we had a Green Bay Packers fan on as well, and Andy Lohman from Because CONCACAF. So make sure you check that out. Check that video out if you are still looking for some Micah Parsons hype. But today we are here to begin the third annual NFL Power Rankings with Josh and myself. We're going to do this in a little bit of a different format for you all now that this is on YouTube. So if you're here watching on YouTube, thank you for being here. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment with some of your favorite teams, some of your favorite rankings. This is a podcast that Josh and I, like I said, have done for 3 years. Instead of your week to week power rankings, because football is such a fickle sport, it's such a small sample size. I always hate's a strong word. I always thought the power rankings every week were a little silly, right? If you went into a week thinking one team was definitively better than another, and then the ball just like got tipped funny on a play and was intercepted in the last 3 seconds for a touchdown, does that mean the team that won is now better than the team that lost? Were you wrong before? Are you now right? So we wanted to take a little bit of a bigger picture look at power rankings. So every 4 weeks, Josh is here to update us on, hey, what are the trends happening with teams? What are the records looking like over the course of these teams? What injuries have taken place and have changed outlooks for team seasons? And we are giving a snapshot every single month of where the teams stand in the power rankings system. Um, to do that this time around is a little different. We're going to move this thing along. We're going to have graphics for you. We're going to move up and down. But Josh, the first thing I want to ask you about doing it this year, now that we've done it for a couple of years, we go into week one. I
Mhm.
was having a hard time thinking about teams where they stand today, week one in September, versus what I think is going to ultimately happen to them in week eight by week 18 of the season. So, how do you do this initial 1.0 rankings? Are you thinking about, I think this team is ultimately going to be horrible, so I put them at 32? Or are you thinking, hey, they ended pretty good last year. I don't think it's going to ultimately work out, but like, they ended pretty well last year, or they were a really good team last year, but I'm expecting some regression. So how do you weigh taking from last year versus clean slate? What do you think is going to happen in 25?
Yeah, I think for me, it all comes back to just being extremely hypocritical. In all honesty, like for some teams, I definitely put in like there's a team that we'll get to, we'll talk about in probably our third or fourth tier, so nothing, not a super relevant team, but I had them higher than I think they're going to finish because I think that now that all the offseason stuff and all that rigmarole's out of the way, they're actually going to start off with some wins and look pretty decent. So I moved them higher than where I think they're going to end up, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
But by the same token, my team 32 is the team that I'm expecting to be team 32 when it's all said and done. I'm expecting them to get the number one pick, that sort of thing. So it's hard to stay consistent with that, because we try when we do this, you've laid it out nicely. When we do it every 4 weeks, we're trying not to have these knee-jerk reactions. And so I think that's the hardest thing, especially because you and I spent the offseason talking about how we think these teams got better or worse and the vibes and all these things. And I tried to throw all that out the window now. And I'm just looking at this first month of the season. Yeah, I think this team could go 3-1, 2-2, and they're not bad, even though I'm not picking them to win the division. I'm not picking them to get anywhere near the playoffs or something like that. And so I'll say this, I try to focus on this season, how I think they will start the year, because this is our first version of the power rankings.
I
Um,
like that. I like that.
That being said, though, I don't know if I'm fully consistent on that. So, like one of the first teams we'll talk about, I nitpicked because I have a gut instinct that they're not going to be exactly up there. So I found a reason to knock them down a really small peg. And so, um, it just kind of depends on how I think about the team. So it's hard to be consistent. So I like being upfront about that. But in general, I'm trying to put everything off to the side and just tunnel vision as the season starts. Do I think they're eighth best team in the league? Do I think they're the 23rd best team in the league? And then just to give us a good starting point, because this is an important one for us, right? Because
Yep.
then,
Hmm.
you know, team 27, even if they go 4-0 to start the season, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be team one, right? They got to work their way up because we have them down here for a reason. So,
Right.
um, so for an establishing power rankings, you try to think about just those first few games. Um, but yeah, it's not a perfect process, but I think it plays into it a little bit because, like you said, I don't like those weekly knee-jerk power reactions. It always seems to come down to who's got the best record and
Hmm.
who beat who, and yeah, that's true to some extent, but it takes away all the nuance and all of the gray area, and I think that it's not a perfect process, the power rankings. You really have to dig into it and figure out which team is actually the better team and to be higher than the other teams behind it. So,
Yeah. I think to your point of deciding like which teams get the week 18 projection treatment and which teams get the September 4th treatment. For me, it was like the extremes, right? The
yeah,
teams I'm kind of flag planting as like this is one of the best teams in the league or this is one of the worst teams in the league. That's like what I'm projecting to happen this season.
yep,
Teams like 7 through 25, it's kind of more that like middle ground of okay, where were they last year? How do I think they helped themselves over the course of this year? And then let's roll the ball out and see what happens. Which, in a lot of ways, for the way the season works, if you're looking at statistics, if you're looking at power rankings, if you're looking at wins and losses and playoffs, it's kind of like it's about the very best teams in the league. It's about the very worst teams in the league and who's going to get that first pick. And
yep.
then everyone else is just kind of there hanging out. So let's get to it. No more rambling and whatnot. We're going to get into this. So you guys are going to see now so there's four columns here. Obviously, the far left is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The far right is blank because we will be moving our consensus pick into that column. That's the other point of this. I come with my ranking, Josh comes with his ranking, and we will come to a consensus ranking together throughout this season. So as you guys can see here, these are our top 8 teams as we get into the 2025 NFL season. Josh and I have 5 of the same top 8, which is cool.
Mhm.
And we have the exact same 4 teams with just one slight tweak. So I have Eagles, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens. I think these are the top 4 teams in the league. I think these are
Yep.
two of the teams that are going to be, or the 2 teams that are going to be top 10 in offense and defense overall this season. I think the Ravens are actually going to have the best record in the NFL this year. I got the Packers in there at 5. I think the Michael Parsons trade gets them into that upper tier for me as well. But just without that elite quarterback or having won the Super Bowl, they're number 5 for me. But this is basically my reverse order of how these teams finished out the season. Eagles win the Super Bowl, Chiefs win the AFC, Bills beat the Ravens. It's kind of where I ended up with it. Josh, what's the case for the Ravens jumping the Eagles, Chiefs, and Bills for you and being number 1 on your preseason rank?
Uh, yeah, so it kind of hit me when we did the over under wins with John about a month ago, and he mentioned that the Ravens might have the best secondary in the league, and kind of the knock on the Ravens the past few years is that for how great Lamar is, for how great their offense can be, you can still throw the ball on them, and so they couldn't shut down completely. But I think if they shore that up, they extended Kyle Hamilton. They always have a good defense, but I think this could be closer to the great defense side of things. And then every time I look at, I know I come on this every year to talk about rushing yards per game like it's the defining factor. But I mean, you look at teams with good O lines and good rushing games, and they seem to do well. And they averaged 100, almost 193 rushing yards a game last year. And when you have that ability to stay on the field, um, and win the time of possessions battle and always put up points. And Lamar is so dynamic. I'm not going to predict a drop off for Derrick Henry until I see it. And so like they're rolling out there with a really good offense. They shored up some offensive line, and if that secondary makes them hard to throw against, it's really hard for me to see a team beating this. I did feel a little weird about it because this is a team that's never made it past, never gotten over that final hump, or hasn't
Hmm.
recently gotten over that final hump in the playoffs. So it looks weird seeing their logo above those other three teams. I will grant you that, but I'm focused. This is one of those times where instead of focusing on last year how it ended, I'm focusing on this year. Do I think that technically they could or are the best team right now? And I think that could be the case. Um, I'm predicting a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover for the Eagles. I think I need to see the Chiefs rebound offensively, and the Bills. They were beneficiaries of a hugely positive turnover differential. I don't know if they're able to duplicate. So unless they need to shore up that defense on their side too to really prove to me they're over that hump. And like you said, this is all super nitpicky. These either of these four teams, none of them would surprise me if they come out of their respective conferences, sorry, and win the Super Bowl. So might be overly critical to rearrange them like this, but
I think you laid out a good case. Like I said, I think the Ravens are going to be awesome this year. I mean, I think they're awesome anyway. I have them four. It's not like I've got them at seven because they can't win the big game, quote unquote. But um,
right.
when I also think powering, it's kind of like who's chasing, right? Who's being hunted? Who's got the target on their backs?
Yeah.
And like, I just don't think anyone thinks the Ravens got a target on their backs right now. Like, what I would say in terms of coming to a consensus here pretty quickly is I think if the Eagles and Chiefs can still be 1 and 2 as the NFC and super and league champion and then AFC champion, because you say you want to see the Chiefs rebound. They won 15 games last year. They
Yeah.
did pretty
Yeah.
good. They had an okay season. I am a little worried about the Bills secondary this time around. Last year you did a great job right around this point of the year actually of reminding of letting me know that hey, this Bills defense has a chance to be like young and refreshed and energized. And it paid off. They were like the 12th defense by DVOA last season. Now I'm a little nervous because I'm looking at the roster and Tre'Davious White is slated to be a starting outside corner for them right now because Maxwell Harrison, their first round pick out of Kentucky, is injured. And that happened pretty early in training camp to the point that we don't even know if he was really even trending that way. So even if when he comes back this season, where is he at? How's he actually looking? But last year, that spot was Rasul Douglas, who,
Mhm.
like, not the best fit for everybody, but a good corner and better than where White has been for the last 4 years, I'd say. So that could be kind of my tiebreaker. My tiebreaker for that team went to who won that game, and that's not always how we like to do this. We don't even like to
Yeah.
rearrange teams based on like head-to-head matchups a lot of time because one game is just one game. So I would give you the Ravens at three, but if you wanted to make a case for Baltimore to get anywhere else, I would listen. But I would take that because I do think the Ravens also have a more complete roster right now than Buffalo.
I will accept that. I think that's fair. Yep. I didn't. I think I might let my bias against. I don't really like the Eagles kind of get in the way, but they won the Super Bowl, so they should be the reigning preseason number one for this year.
All right. So we've got the Eagles and Chiefs at 1-2, which shouldn't be very surprising as everybody watch me struggle to get everybody in order here. Um, let's talk about the Packers. I had the Packers at five. The Parsons trade put them right in the upper echelon. I only had them
Yep.
at seven just before the trade happened, so I didn't have to move them up too much. But talk to me about
Yep.
why they're at eight for you. Or if you want to talk about specifically, you have the Lions, Commanders, and Chargers there. If it's more about those teams, go dive in.
I think it's a little bit more about those teams. I think because I know obviously you can see that we don't have you don't have the Lions up in this top tier, and I
Right.
think that for me, I could easily five does feel a little high to them, but I'm also overcompensating for all offseason. We talked about how detrimental the loss of Frank Ragnow is going to be, how detrimental it is that they don't have Ben Johnson anymore. Is that going to throw Jared Goff off? Um, but I think their defense can be pretty good, and they still have the offensive weapons. And if anyone can hold tight that culture, it's going to be Dan Campbell. Sorry, I almost said Dan Quinn. It's going to be Dan Campbell that can do that. And so the Lions are like my tenuous. They're here unless they falter. Like if they falter in week one or two and don't look the same, they could be in for a big dropout for me. But considering they were there, and I still think they're a contender, I wanted them high. And honestly, kind of what pushed them higher into five as well is because I do unfortunately have to consider the Packers to be a top 10 team. But if I'm giving the Lions as a nod is still the class of the North, it felt like they needed to be above the Packers. So that's what made the Lions for sure, at least in that 5 to 7 range. And then, when I think about the Commanders, they only have 1 year of this success. I think they improved, and I think that Jaden Daniels should be really good. I'm feeling pretty confident about them in the sixth spot. Um, but yeah, that's so it's kind of the Packers helped keep the Lions up there as well because I wanted to keep the Lions above for now. Green Bay. But I know, Green Bay last year, I talked about it a lot. They won with their backup quarterback 2 games. That's huge. The LaFleur coaching is always going to keep those guys there. If Love is healthy, and now one of my biggest worries for the Packers was their pass rush, and now that they have Micah Parsons, like that's a really huge hole that just got filled. And so, especially after that trade, I knew they were going to be in my top 8, and they kind of ended up at the 8 spot for me. So,
I don't have the Lions dropping considerably. Okay. I have them in this next tier that we'll get to. But I
yep.
everybody that I have here in this top 8, other than Matt Stafford's back, I feel like 90% sure I know what these teams are. And
Hmm.
for all of these teams, assuming health, they have an elite unit on one side of the ball and not a back-breaking unit on the other side. Now, I don't think the Lions are going to be in a territory where they completely drop off, but I think if you give any credit to Ben Johnson and any credit to that offensive line as a whole for Detroit, you've got to expect some regression. They can't be a top 3 offense again after they did
Yeah.
that for 3 years in a row under Ben Johnson, right? I think I ended up putting them at like my number 11 offense this season, which is still good. It's still like
Yeah.
meaningful and impactful for their season. It's going to give them a floor, a pretty high
Right.
floor. But I don't think they're going to be one of the offenses of the year when Jared Goff has Graham Glasgow and Christian Mahogany and Tate Ratledge protecting on the interior. And
Yeah.
defensively, Hutchinson's coming off the injury. Two starting defensive tackles are already still out long term. Um, and we have to see what Terry and Arnold is in year 2 after he was their first round pick last year. And it's Rakestraw, who we thought, maybe could get run in year 2 as a day 2 draft pick. He is on IR. I think he's missing the whole season. So there's just enough questions for me with Detroit. Um, and with Washington, they're a classic regression candidate. Their third, fourth down conversion rate was like historic last year. They didn't add to their defense except for a rookie corner, which I love Trey Amos. I think Trey Amos, Marshawn Lattimore, and Mikey Sanders might be like the baddest in a good way cornerback trio in the NFL if those guys are healthy. But I always say like don't rely on a rookie or rookies to like come in and actually impact things necessarily. Like I think it's cool and I'm excited and it could work. But
Yeah.
I'm also not going to say like, oh, I now think they're a top, let's say even just above average defense because Trey
Right.
Amos is there.
Right.
Um, the Chargers we'll get into. The Chargers are a weird one, but the Packers to me, it's a top 5 offense year in year out. No matter what you look at, no matter how banged up Jordan Love is, no matter who's catching passes, no matter who's playing on the offensive line, it's top 5 offense regardless. Add in a first round wide receiver this year,
Mhm.
and I think we could just chalk up another top 5 finish on the offense. And the
Yep.
defense last year, we saw how great the team was from a success standpoint when their defense was thriving off of turnovers, which you can't count on. But now they add Micah Parsons. Like this is a borderline top 10 defense for me also. This is my closest to being a third team to being top 10 in offense and defense that I'm projecting. And all of that plus great head coach, a quarterback that we think is right around the top 10. I forget where he ultimately tried to put Jordan Love in our last QB rankings. Um, but that to me, that's just answers, right? I have questions about Detroit. I have answers
Yeah.
for Green Bay. I think they're right there on the inside.
Well, I think you've talked me into moving the Packers above Detroit because actually what I did when I was doing my research and my prep is I found I called it a fun stat from 2024. I tried to find a stat for each team that told a story, not like my reverse this stat from whenever I did that on this Power Rankings podcast, but just something to tell a story. And the stat pulled on the Lions, they led the league 51.6% of their offensive drives ended in a score. And that is
It's a
an
lot.
insane clip to keep at. That's an insane clip to keep. And so I even wrote my note that there was going to be a little bit of a decline. So I think that coupled with what we mentioned with the offensive line and Ben Johnson and all that stuff, I think it is fair to move them below the Packers. And I see what you're saying about the Commanders as well. My one flag plant though is I will give you multiple teams here in the back half of the top eight if you're willing to move the Broncos out of it.
I knew this was gonna be your one. Yeah, I'm okay with that. That's
Okay,
fine.
all right. So I will let you or well, we still have the Texans and the Rams in there too, I guess.
The case for the Texans, elite defense, right?
Yeah,
And just like
yeah,
I think this offense is gonna get back to, even if we're being pretty modest and just saying like, can they get back to the average that they were in CJ Stroud's rookie year? This is an elite defense. And when you are a top four defense in the league, that matters. All right. I think that's
yeah.
where they're going to be at. And that was the case for Denver as well.
Yep.
And then LA for the Rams. How much are you keeping the Rams out of here? And you have them pretty close still, but how much are you keeping the Rams out of the top eight was Stafford related? Just like being
Um,
unsure.
so it was a couple different things. It was mainly the Stafford thing was a big thing for me. I don't like back injuries, especially from a guy who's getting up there in age and has, to his credit, battled through
Hmm.
tons of injury. I just don't like a back injury here, and I think if they have to go to Jimmy Garoppolo, they're going to be so below average or barely middling that I can't have them higher. But it's actually similar to why I had Detroit above Green Bay is I was much higher when I did this on the 49ers who are coming up in my rankings.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I got into that game, which maybe is stupid to play, but I got into that game of the Niners are my pick to take the West this year. And
Hmm.
if they're my pick to take the West, does it make sense for me to start the year with an aging, injury-prone quarterback above them in the rankings? But I also didn't think the Niners were a top 10 team necessarily, right? They're right on the fringes. And so that allowed me to kind of move both those teams back because I think the West is going to be a little bit closer to mediocrity than elite this year. And so I think their division kind of knocked themselves down further. And I decided I needed to have the Niners above the Rams. So I'm not, I think we were like 5 spots apart on the Rams.
Hmm.
I don't mind moving them up in my from my original spot. Um, but I think I had a hard time putting them in the top 10. I think they're still while their defense was really good and I like that they signed offensive linemen and are going to try to protect him. I still just feel like they're not while they are above average. I don't know how stable that's going to be this year. So
So if the case for the Rams going down is you think the 49ers are better, what if both teams were just good? Like what if Stafford's just healthy all year
yeah,
and the defense takes a little bit of step up, and then on San Fran's side, like McCaffrey and Purdy and Trent Williams are healthy all year and Salah makes that defense like respectable. I think there's a world where both these teams win 10, 11 games, and,
yeah.
and it's a, tiebreaker situation
And
for the division.
that was one of those things you're talking about. Like, do you look at all 18 weeks or do you look at right now?
Right.
And right now, Christian McCaffrey's healthy. Trent Williams is
Hmm.
healthy. Like,
Hmm.
I'm
Yep.
not betting against this offense where Brock Purdy has continually proven people wrong. So, like, the Niners offense, I know they won't have Ayuk for the first handful of weeks, but they'll have George Kittle, and everyone's raving about Pearsall in camp. They have Christian McCaffrey. They will be fine from an offensive weapon standpoint. And so, with Salah coming back to stabilize the defense, even if they're not necessarily top tier, the Niners, at least on paper right now, look really, really good. So, yeah, I think that's true. I think both things can be true there for sure.
Talk to me about the Chargers because this is the team that I had the biggest crisis on.
Yes.
And actually, I wanted to talk about the Packers a little bit more too, but you kind of gave in pretty easily. I will just say on that YouTube reaction video, I didn't get to dive in quite as much on like what I think schematically this looks like for the Packers. I won't take too long on this, but like I said, they progressed defensively with Jeff Hafley as DC last year. Xavier McKinney's being signed, and I think they finished eighth in DVOA, which was like very obviously turnover based. They were like fourth in the league in turnovers forced. Um, but what Parsons does is he just knocks everybody down a peg, and it's gonna make everybody's life so much easier. So
Yep.
Parsons now your number one rusher, which means Rashawn Gary is like a number two, which is way better for him, right? So if
Yep.
his life is a little bit easier, he can be a little more impactful.
Yep.
Now I kind of want to see Lucas Van Ness be more of like a penetrating one gap defensive tackle rather than try to make him a big edge rusher. I think that would be fun, a better use of his athleticism, size, and skill. And then for the defensive backfield, that's made up of a lot of slot corners. Like if you look at their five starters in their defensive back room. Four of them are slot corners, basically, and they just have to plug them in everywhere.
Yep.
But it makes their life so much easier if now you get to the quarterback half a second to a full
Yep.
second earlier and make him make a play. So I love Parsons. So that's why I'm
Yeah.
gonna push for them to be at 5. I know you said I could kind of do whatever, but I'll play a card here. This is another aspect of the power rankings with Josh. If we can't come to like a clear consensus, we have these playing cards we can use. So I'm just gonna go ahead and play the Peter Griffin back scratcher card
Okay.
because I'm gonna cheat and also say it's a my I scratch your back, you scratch mine situation. I get the Packers at 5. You get to kick the Broncos out of the top 8. So that's what we're that's what we're
I
gonna
think
do
that's
there.
that's a great deal.
So that's a good use of the Peter Griffin back scratcher card, our first card of the
My
2025 rankings.
my fun stat from 2024 from the Packers was last year they didn't have Micah Parsons. This year they do.
Great stat. I really like
He's
that one.
he's
That's one of
he's that big of a difference maker, so I'm
I
not
think
gonna.
that's my favorite stat you've ever said on the podcast. Um, and then so for the Chargers, I'm having
Yes.
a crisis of identity here because I love Justin Herbert.
Yes.
I love the Harbaughs. I
Yep.
love everything this team is standing for. And then you're like borderline all pro left tackle gets hurt and
Mhm.
is out for the season.
Yep.
And not only is it that he is gone, but the guy that's coming into the lineup is Trey Pipkins, who like they had to turn into a guard for a few years because he couldn't play tackle, and now he's playing tackle. And we just saw the Chargers get the crap kicked out of them in the playoffs because Slater and Alt got wrecked by the Texans defense.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me the whole season's going to be around Alt and Pipkins? And like, I just think there's a ceiling on the offense now, even though I like what they did from a pass catcher standpoint. But like, what is the ceiling for this pass game with Trey Pipkins playing tackle, an unknown in a run game situation because of your interior and what your combination of running backs is going to be between, okay, is Najee actually playing now? And then like Marion
Right.
Hampton's a rookie. Like, where do we feel about that? And then you have Greg Roman calling plays anyway. So like, what's really the ceiling of the passing offense? And then defensively, you look at the roster, and there's lots of nice projection stuff. And like the defensive coordinator comes from college last year. He's a hardball guy, Jesse Minter. But like, are we going to do it again? Like, is he going to be able to come up with other aspects of this defense going into his second year? And again, you just look at the talent and like, the hipsters, the NFL Twitter loves Dayon Henley. So like, okay, great, but like, what is he? And then those fifth round corners they drafted last year, Cam Hart and Tarheeb Stowe, like came out of nowhere. Okay, corner is already super volatile. When you take the talent of fifth rounders, what is it actually going to be, right? So, I know Joey Bosa was hurt all year, and my guy Tui Pelotu is going to be like the nominal starter now, full time for sure. But like,
Yep.
that's still Tui Pelotu across from Khalil Mack, who's not the most prolific pass rusher in his own right, anyways, based on his style play. So, like, I just have a lot of question about the Chargers. What was it that made you put them at 7?
So it was honestly the stat when I looked at their when I think of the Chargers, I always think of my me over what's the word? I'm probably way higher on Justin Herbert's talent than I should be, especially from a team that offensively wants to run the ball. But I do like that he's getting his old aging grandpa safety valve back in Keenan Allen.
And I do too. I love
Um,
that. I love that.
and I think I'm high on the AFC West. I'm high on three of the four teams in the AFC West, I would say. I'm just kidding. The Broncos are not the worst team in that division. But my
Oh,
point
okay.
is,
I thought you were
I
talking
think
crap
I
about my
think
Raiders.
that no, well, no, I like the Raiders, but they're not. And I think they could be good, but well, we'll see. We'll get there. Um, my because I was gonna have them outside of the top 10 for sure, and kind of in that potential playoff team, like 10 to 14 was gonna be my initial range. But when I saw it, looked at they gave up the least amount of points in the league last year, and when I started thinking about it, I was like, their defense was really good, and I don't know what I don't like. I feel like their offense is good enough, and I also feel like I'm overlooking the Rashawn Slater thing. I don't. I know he's an All-Pro left tackle, and I feel like they're going to be able to work around it, but maybe not. And the other part of this here with the Texans, like you said, they blew them up in the playoffs, but I needed to lower the Texans when I was looking at, how CJ Stroud got sacked like 16 more times than he did the previous year. And some of his numbers were so much further down. And even though he played two more games, and I know this offseason we're talking ourselves up like, I think they'll be all right from an offensive line standpoint. And I think CJ Stroud's going to play better this year. But I just like for the season to start this way, I need to see them come together a little bit because I feel like offensively it's going to take some adjusting, even though we like that they got an improvement at the offensive coordinator. So part of the because the Texans were going to be my initial team up in this range is why I'm bringing them up now. Because I know you have them in the top 8 and I have them I think at 9. So they're just outside of it. But I think I nudged the Chargers up a few spots because of the fact I'm still high on Herbert, and I'm kind of chalking up last year's playoff loss. It looked very uncharacteristic, and
Oh yeah.
the Texans defense is that good, but I also think when you look at the departures and things on the arrivals of the Chargers defense, there's a lot of like the guys that you mentioned, there's a lot of continuity there, and I think that while they may not give up the lowest amount of points this year, I still think they're going to be really good defensively. Um, and so if they can overcome Rashawn Slater's injury, I think they'll be a top team in the AFC. So I don't know, that's probably not a convincing argument. I just want that's what moved them up. So basically they were in like the 10 to 13 range and then I bumped them up when I saw that stat and I conveniently chose to ignore that. I just assumed that Harbaugh will coach around the Slater thing. But when you mentioned them getting blown up in the playoffs from the Houston's front seven, that was a pretty convincing argument too. So they're a hard team because
They
we're
are.
Herbert guys. So we want
Yeah.
in our head they should be a top 6 team, really like, but they
And
haven't
and
been yet. So it's
and
hard.
we're also not going to be the guys that if they end up like I had them at 18th and we'll move them up from there. But we're also that's not going to be a reflection on Herbert for us either.
Right, right.
This isn't that kind of show. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what I propose.
All right.
If I can get the Texans at 6 because it's going to be that elite defense. We could do the Lions at 7
Hmm.
and then we can go with your choice of NFC West team at 8.
Okay.
I think one of those NFC West teams has to be above the Commanders
Okay.
because I just want to see the Commanders do it again. And
That's fair. That's fair.
they're in that a tier for me of just like the progression and regression question marks. Like
Yep.
when we get to this next page, you all see, but um, it's a bunch of teams for me that's I'm expecting regression and I'm expecting progression, but we like don't actually know to what degree that could be or will it happen. And so I'm just not there to
Right.
say they're one of the top 8 teams in the league right now. But I do think, the Lions, I
Right.
found myself consistently kind of pushing them back up as we got closer to the season. So I'm comfortable with them still being
Yeah.
kind of in that top 8.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I like to pick and choose which teams I decide aren't going to regress versus are
Right.
going to
Yeah.
regress. So
That
I
makes
should
sense.
probably accept a little regression from the Commanders. So if we go Texans at 6, Lions at 7, I am going to stand pat with my Niners at my Niners. I did not say that. Delete that from the internet, please. They're not my Niners. But I'm going to put the Niners at 8. I think that they're going to because like yeah. And I mentioned this during the wins total thing. This isn't the same podcast, I get that, but they have a schedule where they could get off to a good start. They could get into a rhythm and I think they can take the West. So I'm going to put them up there at 8.
And I made the case for the Niners. I mean, I had them at 9. I made the case for the Niners last week on the show with Peyton. I think Chris McCaffrey, he's my offensive player of the year pick.
Yep.
Him, Shanahan, Purdy, Trent Williams are there. It's going to be a really, really good offense. They were still 9th or 10th last year, even with all those guys banged up. So if they're a top 5, 6 offense and Salah, I think, even though I hate the defensive roster, can just make them even mediocre, like 18 to 21, this can still be a double digit win team and win the division. I'm with you. I had them as the division winner. So there's our top 8. So that's how this is going to look, guys. Mine is on the left, Josh is in the middle, and on the right, 1 through 8, we have the Eagles, Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, Packers, Texans, Lions, and 49ers as our top 8. Let's go ahead and throw it real quick to Box Score Network. Let me tell you guys about a little something that's happening on Box Score Network. Two P's. So two P's on a pod. I just mentioned Peyton. Him and his brother Parker chat about the aftermath of week 1 of college football and give an early preview of the upcoming week 1 NFL slate. So that is no longer upcoming. That's here. So if you want to get in one more podcast, getting you ready for the week 1 slate in the NFL and reacting to all things college football from week 1, go check out Two Peas on a Pod with Peyton and Parker. We appreciate your continued support of Box Score Network pods and Box Score Network, which is on YouTube. We're going to have a ton of fantasy content on the YouTube channel this year. So if you're looking at start sit questions, waiver wire pickups, go over to Box Score Network YouTube. We will have those there for you. All right, Josh, we rounded out our top eight. Let's get into our next eight here. So some teams here. Obviously, we've covered these teams. I had the Niners and the Lions right there, rounding out my top 10.
Yep.
You had the Texans at nine. You had the Niners at 11. The Rams at 13. There's your Broncos at 14, who I had all the way up at seven. I have the Commanders at 11. So the teams you had in the top eight that I didn't have for the most part, Lions, Commanders, and then you had I mean, I was even higher on the Niners than you, but I
Yep.
had these teams right here as well. So we weren't too far off. So I think we can
Nope.
fill in a couple of these spaces pretty quickly.
Yep. Well, and
Ra-
I'll mention the Broncos real quick
Okay.
because they are more ceremoniously than anything at 14 for me. So if we want to slot them in at nine, I'm not going to fight you because um, what did I write here? Oh, I said I want my hill to die on to be formed of the right process. So I kept the Broncos here at 14, which is the seven seed in the AFC, um, which is basically how they finished last year. They got in, they got a playoff game. Excuse me. But my fun stat was that they only won two games against team with winning records last year, and one of those was Week 18 against the Chiefs backups. And so while their defense I think is kind of otherworldly, we've talked about this before, so we don't have to go to a ton of detail. But I think they're basically at their ceiling, and everyone, and maybe it's because I've been paying too much attention to fantasy, but everyone thinks that because Sean Payton has RJ Harvey, that's going to just like catapult this offense. But really, it's still Bo Nix throwing to Marvin Mims and Cortland Sutton and Devon Vele and like Evan Ingram's there, yeah, sure, and like they have a good offensive line, so they're not going to be bad. And so I had to keep them at least initially. I don't think they're going to be bad, but I'm not ready to call them a top 10 team. So if we want to slide them in at 11, that's a pretty fair split between where we each had them. And then I got to say my piece, which was a flag plant at them at 14. But I said my hill to die on that they're not going to be as good as people think they are is starting with the right process because I'm giving them their flowers for they what they did last year, right? And so when they falter early on, you can say everyone can say, "Yep, Josh, sorry, we knew you were right," but we'll drop them down then. So
I don't hate this because I'm not actually even a Bo Nix guy. Like
right,
we said it all year last year. I feel like the seven I put is gonna make some people on YouTube here think that I'm a huge Bo Nix guy, and I knew that 6 years, 7 years, 8 years of college was gonna make him a good NFL quarterback. Um, and I'm not. So yeah, we'll knock them down from the seven. The seven was again because I know that that's a good defense,
yes,
and but here's why I can get with you and knock them down a little bit. And I've said it all offseason. Defense isn't as sticky as offense, right? So that's why a team like the Commanders, I'll go with you and I'll keep them above the Broncos because the Commanders did the right things, keeping their offense, staying ahead of the regression curve from a
right,
totality standpoint on offense, adding Debo, adding Connerly, adding Tunsil, adding Bill, Krosky Merritt, putting
yep,
him in there. Um, they insulated some offensive regression. Even if
yep,
their third and fourth down conversion rates aren't as high,
right,
this is still going to be a good offense, right?
yes,
So because offense is more sticky, I can give them the tiebreaker. But
okay,
but for me with the Broncos, it was I think their defense is built in the right way, being front to back. But they don't have like a true number one pass rusher. They don't, they have really good run defensive tackles, run stopping defensive tackles. Um, they have nice, solid, fun edge rushers. Maybe you can wonder what's going to happen at the other corner spots. That's not certain. So like, there's enough questions there. I would say that, and because regression or because defense isn't always sticky, it would shock me more if the Commanders fell out of the top 12 offenses than the Broncos falling out of the top eight defenses. And traditionally, with offense is more like offense has a longer, not shelf life, but that's the word I'm going to say. Like the top quarter of offenses matter. So like the top eight offenses matter in the NFL. Really, the top four defenses matter, right? You have a much smaller window of your defense being able to carry your team than you do your offense.
correct,
Is kind of the research and studies I've done. So
yep,
what I want to do here, the Rams I want to put at nine,
okay,
if we can do that.
yep. Because I,
And
I got to pick
then
my Niners above. Okay, if I say my
your
Niners
Niners,
again,
baby.
if
Your
I say my
Niners.
Niners again, I need you to throw me off this podcast and never
Not a
come back.
chance. I want to put all of that on you because I'm normally very anti-Niners, but I'm here for it this year. But if they can be your team for the year, this is your new Dolphins, man. We just solved it. You
Oh,
hate
disastrous.
defense and you hate real quarterbacks. Congratulations. You just love offensive minded whiz kids who just get
Yes,
out there and not real football.
100%.
Anyways,
100%.
look at me. I just highlighted the 49ers again. We're gonna get the Rams, real football here, at 9.
There we go.
We're gonna get the Commanders at 10. So the Commanders, for an awesome
Yep.
season, they still get to
Yep.
be at 10 in the top 10. I think that
Yep. I
makes
think that
sense.
that feels good. Feels right.
And then you said it. Broncos 11 is a good split the difference.
Yep.
And that is a little bit of like you like to say, flag plant. Hey, you're not top
Yep.
10, but you're
Nope.
close. You're right there. Because here's the thing. Yeah, everyone's talking about like offensive progression if the defense stays the same for the Broncos. And I baked a little bit of that in, but I think I moved them from like 15th in DVOA to 14th. Like I think they're still I think it has a little room to grow. I think Knicks has a room to grow. I think the offense has some room to grow, but I still think there's a ceiling on it. And you mentioned Devon Vele, and I should just say for the record, he is the guy that Sean Payton traded to the Saints because he said he was the next
Oh, that's
Marcus
right.
Colston,
Oh, that's
which is
right. I forgot
hilarious.
about
So you saying that just gave us another opportunity to bring it up. Other wide receiver news that happened as we are recording: Jawan Jennings is getting a agreement on a deal that's adding $3 million in playtime incentives to his
that.
contract for
Oh,
the season, per Drew
okay.
Rosenhaus and Jason Rosenhaus and Adam Schefter. Um, he's still going to be a free agent at the end of the season. There's no extension, but he
Okay.
can earn more money by playing this year.
Gotcha.
When you see that and you hear that, he's literally getting playtime incentives. Is that don't hold out, you're not hurt, just play these games and here's 3 million, but we're not just giving you 3 million. We're
Right.
saying it's playtime incentive. Is that just there this was it hamstring that they were saying he was out? Was that just like that's all?
Yeah.
Or is this, hey, it was the 49ers, assume everything is a real injury?
I'm sure he was dinged up a little bit, but it did sound like it was more contract related. So I think this is yeah, I think this is hey, this is your chance to play for a new deal somewhere else, but thanks
That's
for
great.
your time. We need you till Ayuk is back, so
But yeah, for sure. All right, so let's get into it. That rounds out our top 11. Rams, Commanders, Broncos. All right, here's the teams we're messing with here. We had four teams the same in this tier.
yep.
Three of the differences were just the teams that I had in the top that you didn't have. So we have a lot of the same teams here. We have the Bucks in here, we have the Steelers in here, the Vikings are in here. Um, you have the Bengals, I have the Seahawks, I have the Jags. I think those are all our remaining differences. So I'm not going to let you put the Steelers above the Bucks. I'm just not going to do that. We can maybe talk about the Steelers after that. You had the
Okay.
Bucks at 12. I had the Bucks at 12. Can we keep the Bucks at 12?
I was just gonna say I think since we had a few that were exact, we should try to honor those as best we can.
There's enough questions with the Steelers who we're going to get into here.
Yep.
But I think the Bucks being at 12, I don't want to get ahead of our skis and like Liam Cohen's gone. I think that's a big deal. But this is still a
Yes.
pretty good roster
Yep.
that no matter who is the offensive coordinator for this core of players, they're just a pretty good team. And I think the rest of these teams we have on here have enough questions that I'm like, I can just pencil in the Bucks for being a top 12 team this year, even if it's not as prolific as an offense as it was last season.
Yeah, and I think what I wrote for the Bucks is that they really just need to improve that pass defense, and it's not so terrible that it's like it can only go up from here. Like they still need to do some things, but at the same because I mean, you could pick a pass defense stat. I didn't even pick a specific one. I think I wrote down quarterback rating. They gave up a 97.3 or something. Like it was one of the lower ones in the league. So they have to find a way to shore that up. But like you said, their offense, while it might drop off a little bit, it's still going to be pretty prolific. Um, and I don't see a reason right now to think they're going to be any worse than they were last year. So
And with their pass defense, they did my bugaboo. They they improved the secondary with rookies. They didn't add any
Mhm.
veterans, right? And day two rookies at that. Ben Morrison, who would have been a first round guy, but injuries were a concern. And then I forget which of the feisty round three corners that they took. Um,
Which of who?
who's the other rookie corner for Tampa? It's not it's not Jacob Parrish, is it? Who's the other one?
Sorry, my screen froze for a second. Who were you saying?
Bucks rookie corners. Ben Morrison is one.
Was it Jacob Parrish, the other one?
Oh, was it Parrish? Okay, cool. All right. So yeah. So I like those players, but again, like the rookies aren't going to come
Okay.
in and fix that pass defense. The other guy that they added was your guy, Hassan Reddick.
Yes.
I'm just not quite gonna count him to improve pass defense, but I still think 12 is appropriate for them. Um, all right. Teams we have remaining around here to talk about that are on this page. The Jaguars. What the heck is gonna happen with the Jaguars? The Steelers. Are the Steelers going
Yes.
to have a good offense this season? The Vikings, what's JJ McCarthy going to be? The Seahawks, what's Sam Darnold going to be? And then the Bengals, is this going to be or not going to be a bottom three defense? Those are the questions we kind of have to answer here. Um,
Yes.
what's the biggest question to you of those questions? Like, what's the thing that's maybe has the biggest swing for a team out of all these teams?
So the all the things we talked about in the offseason with the Bengals, how they mangled the Shamar Stewart thing at first, and who knew if they were going to get Trey Hendrickson back, and we don't know if Al Golden's going to improve that defense at all. But we talk about proof of concept all the time. The proof of concept in that Bengals offense is insane, right? And
Hmm.
so in my head, I was thinking vibes aside, organizational dysfunction aside, this offense is good enough to make this team go 10-7 with a really terrible, terrible defense in my prediction. And so that's kind of what had them hanging on in the top 16 for me, is because I started to play these games in my head about, well, could the Bengals beat this team? Absolutely. Could they beat this team? Absolutely. And it's not the healthiest way to do power rankings because we know that their defense could be real bad again. But I think their offense could be that great where it won't matter. I think Joe Burrow could throw for 5,000 yards this year. And I think that they have a lot of questions, but they balance out that terrible defense with a potentially elite offense. Like if they had a middle of the road defense, the Bengals would be in the top 10 probably, and we wouldn't bat an eye. Like that's
Easy.
the only thing that's keeping them down here. So 16 felt right to me because it was elite offense, absolutely atrocious defense. Let's meet in the middle. That's mine. So they still have some of the biggest questions there. The other team I would bring up here is the Jags, because I wanted the Jags to be higher because
Hmm.
I think they're going to be fun. I think their offense has a chance to be great, but I'm a little worried about some growing pains with Liam Cohen in there. I don't know. I want to see Travis Hunter be successful, but there's still, I need to see it a little bit first. Trevor Lawrence didn't play a full season last year, so I want to see the offense hit full cylinder or hit full stride and be running smoothly before I move them too high. So I have some questions there a little bit. Um, because I'm also nervous about them because if they can't do it with a Liam Cohen led offense and this Travis Hunter positivity train where everyone just gravitates towards him, right? The situation looks like it's great. Like I saw you had him at 13, I was immediately jealous. I was like, I want to put him up at 13. Uh, but it
We could do
but it
it.
was
We
too
could do it right now. We could do it
I was
right
too
now.
I was too scared. So I couldn't move him up there. I want to see it first. I want to see it because if they come out like middling and sputtering and like really inconsistent, I think I'm gonna feel really bad. Like growing pains are natural when you have a new head coach, but like this team I feel like is built to be good now, and so I'm just nervous about the Jags. So I couldn't put them too high. I don't know if that answers your question very well, but that was my
Um,
question with the Jags.
we also have to not forget about the Chargers. So I got them in here. We can't forget.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
We need a place to put the Chargers. Um,
Yes.
so maybe 13 is a good spot for them. I had them at
Yeah,
18. You had them at 8. So maybe right here at 13 is a good spot for them just to answer
I
that
think
question.
yes, that's a good
This
spot for
this
them.
feels like a good floor for a Justin Herbert and a Harbaugh led team.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, man, Jags, I'm all in.
Yeah.
I agree. Like if it's not good this year, like it's blow up territory. It's like get
Yes.
off the Heinz Allen
100
contract. Don't give
100%.
Trayvon Walker a new contract. Trade Trevor Lawrence for what you can.
Right.
Like build around like you have Brian Thomas Jr. and like that's your starting place and Travis
Yes.
Hunter, right? But here's the thing, man. Liam Cohen made that Bucks offense gangbusters from day one last season.
Yeah, that's true.
And Trevor Lawrence is a much more talented quarterback than Baker Mayfield. And like
Hmm.
if you in the then if you want to zoom out and think about it in the aggregate, what was the Bucks offensive talent last year outside of Baker? Mike Evans, awesome.
Yep.
Chris Godwin got hurt halfway through the year, and then it was like, you know, Sterling Shepard came in. Nobody remembers it.
Yep.
Sterling Shepard came in like week 10, and Baker was like, yeah, this guy's gonna play. And like that was supposed to be kind of part of their offense, and they just kept chugging along.
Yep.
Like Bucky
Yep.
Irving, a fourth round running back, was like really important for them.
Yep.
And everyone now is saying the Bucks offensive line is so much better. I said this a couple weeks ago, but like we didn't think the Bucks offensive line was that good going into last season. Now they have Tristan Wirfs, who is infinitely better than anybody the Jags have now. But he was also switching sides. We didn't know for sure that he was just going to be a day one All Pro at left tackle as well. So I think Cohen is just an answer solver. And I
Yep.
think this defense, I wish Travis Hunter was playing, and I've said this all off season, so I won't belabor it. I just wish he was playing starting defense, but he's not, so we have to assume there's going to be some lumps. But there's enough talent
Mhm.
on this defense that
Yep.
like I think it's significantly better than the Bengals, and I think
Yeah,
this
for sure.
offense is still going to be around that tier, like in that 10 to 12, or I should say top 10 to 12, where it's going to give them a similar output to the Bengals. And you mentioned the Bengals, right? And like that chasm of like elite offense and then like the opposite of elite defense. It's so funny because those things work so counteractive to each other. If you have a really good offense, you have a floor of 8 wins, right? That
Right.
historically speaking, by DVOA, if you have a top eight offense, and but here's the thing, there's no differentiation between a top four offense and a top eight offense.
Hmm.
Okay. So like even if you're like, oh, but the Bengals are gonna be a special elite offense, there's no statistical relevance to being the fourth best offense versus the eighth best offense in terms of what your record actually ends up being in the year.
Hmm.
Defense, if you are for the Bengals, it's good because unless you're a bottom four defense, that doesn't really have any impact either.
Right.
But here's the thing, I think they're going to be a bottom four defense this year. Now, and your ceiling when you're a bottom four defense is 8 wins. Now you need that elite offense. But I just think they're going to end up being like a 7 to 9 win team again because I think that defense is
Yeah.
going to be terrible. Now there's a chance Al Golden, comes from the college game, makes the defense simpler, and they could be the 24th best defense and they'll win 12 games. There's certainly a world where that happens.
Yep.
But I like again, offense is easier to predict than defense. And the fact that I am 90% sure that Bengals defense is going to be horrible, I'm not in on. I think it's very indicative that we haven't talked about the Steelers, Vikings, or Seahawks yet. So I think these next two, couple spots can be between Jags and Bengals. Um, we just went
I
on a huge thing about them, and they'll probably just end up being back to back or whatever. But
yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
that's where I'm at with those two.
I think that so at first I'll say I think the fact that we both had the Vikings at 15 is pretty telling. I'd
Hmm.
be happy to keep them at 15.
Hmm.
And I think that, when you mentioned that at some point with the elite level offenses between ranks 4 and 8, it doesn't really matter and translate to more wins. I think if Cincinnati has a slightly improved defense, that'll be good, but they have not shown that yet, and they shouldn't get points for potentially getting better at that. You had the Bengals just out of this tier at 17, right?
Yes, I did. Hmm.
Yeah. So I think the Bengals are the obvious team to drop out of this tier. And if you're okay also dropping the Seahawks, I think at 14 we could go Jags or Steelers. I'll let you pick because you had the Jags above your Steelers. I think highly of the Steelers. You don't like to talk good about your team, so we'll go Vikings at 15, and we could do Steelers at 16. That feels pretty good.
I like that. So I was going to ask you because this Viking Seahawks thing, and I'm good
Oh,
with this
yeah.
because Viking Seahawks Steelers to me were all in the we have no idea what is going to happen on offense, but
Yep.
these could be literally the top three defenses this year.
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
from an emotional standpoint, I was not in on the Minka Fitzpatrick trade for Jalen Ramsey. On the field, I'm ecstatic. I think this is going to work out. And TJ Watt's healthy right now, and Cam Hayward is back, and Peyton Wilson is going to be in year two and he's going to be a starting linebacker this season.
Yep.
The Vikings do what they do. I'm assuming Flores can cook
Mhm.
it up for another season. Hopefully Dallas
Yep.
Turner gets into the mix this year as their extra wrinkle. And then the Seahawks team, I think, is going to be just Mike McDonald in year two with the defense, gangbusters.
Yep.
But I was going to ask you, all these teams have questions on offense and specifically at quarterback. What's
Yep.
Rodgers going to be like at 41 on a new team? History says bad. History says if
Yes.
you're in your 40s changing teams at quarterback, you are bad. There's been one good one, and it was Tom Brady. Um, the Vikings have a second year guy coming off of a knee injury who has not played,
Yep.
and people were kind of unsure about him coming out in the draft. And then the Seahawks have
Yep.
Sam Darnold, who we've only seen be good for 22 games of his NFL career, probably.
Yep.
A couple with the Panthers and then most of last season with the Vikings. I was going to ask you how you felt between the Vikings and Seahawks. And okay, is it a vote of confidence in the Vikings infrastructure versus a vote of confidence in Sam Darnold? And what percentage you give those two things? And then how that results in how you feel about the Vikings and then the Seahawks. Like, is it like 99 Vikings infrastructure, 1% Sam Darnold, and then you think the Seahawks are going to be horrible and the Vikings are going to be good, but you also don't believe in JJ too highly? Is it everybody's 50-50 and everyone's just going to kind of be fine? Where, how does that wash shake out for you? You had the Vikings at 15, you had the Seahawks
Yes.
at 19, so not too terribly different.
No,
Um,
because I actually my stat I pulled up for the Seahawks, I'll start with them, was actually of the positive ilk. Because I think that I looked the fun stat I found from them is that only 48.8% of their touchdowns were passing TDs. Now that includes passing TDs versus rushing TDs versus return touchdowns, all those types of things, right? And so they were just not as good offensively, but out goes Ryan Grubb and out goes Geno Smith, who we both really like, but there were some issues last year with that
you
whole
watch your
Seahawks
mouth.
offense.
You watch
And I
your
think
mouth.
from Darnold to Kubiak, I think you're going to see it aired out more. What's that?
I said you watch your mouth
Sorry,
as
what
you
was
talk
that?
about Geno Smith.
Oh no, I don't think it was a Geno problem. I don't think it was a Geno problem. I think it was a coordinator problem and a DK Metcalf problem, which if oddly enough is your
Doesn't
new
make me feel
number
great
one
either. All
receiver.
right, but go ahead.
Sorry.
But
Um,
go off, as the kids say.
yeah. But yeah, so I had the Seahawks at 19, but their defense, they're much better than 19 if it's their defense and if it's the Sam Darnold from last year from with the Vikings. I really worry about the headspace with Darnold because I think that the Seahawks now can air it out more and I think he's capable. He can make all the throws. I just have a really bad taste in my mouth for how he ended last season. Week 18 and the playoff game, there was clearly a mental block for him that somehow wasn't there at the beginning. And so I can't get past that for the Seahawks, even though they're going to have a great defense and their offense should be really good or should be good at least. And so the other telling thing for me with the Vikings is if they were willing, I do trust their infrastructure. I trust Kevin O'Connell coaching up a quarterback. I feel like, he can get, I mean, he was getting four TD games from Nick Mullins, who is also throwing
Right.
four interceptions, right? But I feel confident. Like, I don't think the Vikings offense is going to be so stagnant that it's going to be, you know what I mean? Like, if
Hmm.
McCarthy isn't the prospect that we think he's going to be, I think he's at a floor, a game manager that will be smart and will make some winning plays at times. Like, you know what? So I feel like, and again, I'm a Vikings fan, so obviously I'm happier with my situation than with Sam Darnold. But but I put him at 15 to be realistic because we haven't seen JJ McCarthy in the regular season in the NFL, and so there's a lot of variability. There's a lot of things that could cause the offense to not get off on a good start. But I think that with the Kevin O'Connell factor, at the worst, he's going to be mediocre or just kind of a game manager type. Whereas Darnold's worse. If he's not right, if he's not clicking, I think you're going to see tons of interceptions. I think you're going to see holding the ball too long. I think you're going to see a lot of missed throws. I think it's going to be a detriment to a team that should be pretty good because their defense is good. So um, that's where I stand there. I'm a little bit more confident in McCarthy in the system than I am with Darnold in a new spot, if that makes sense. But I don't need
Yeah.
to bury the Seahawks. Like you said, I had them at 19, you had them at 16, so we were pretty close on them. As
Yeah.
and their defense, like you said, should be really solid. So
All right, so this is the rounding out of our top half here. We have Rams, Commanders, Broncos, Bucks, Chargers, Jags, Vikings, Steelers. Our teams are always very similar. We're always very close together in these rankings of our teams. Maybe it's
we
just
are.
the way we approach trying to talk about the teams we root for, but alas, here we are. Okay, so 17, 18, I think need to be Bengals, Seahawks in some capacity.
Yep.
To me, I would still go Seahawks above
Okay.
because I am very confident. I'm very confident in both these teams' better unit being top five in their respective unit. I think this is
Sure.
going to be a top five Bengals offense. I think this is going to be a top five Seahawks defense. I think this is going to be a bottom five Bengals defense. And I think the Seahawks have a floor, assuming health. And, you know, we have to do that for everybody. But like right now, Abraham Lucas is healthy. And when he's
Yep.
healthy, he's a good right tackle. Charles Cross is a borderline top 10 left tackle. That's not talked about. They had Gray Zabel in the draft.
Yep.
Ken Walker is healthy right now. Zach Charbonnet is good when he's playing. What was Clint Kubiak good at with New Orleans for those 3 weeks? It was a good run game. So as
Yep.
long as those guys are healthy, those three offensive linemen. Now listen, they don't have a center like Eric McCoy who is doing a lot of work in that run game, pulling, getting out into space, and doing stuff. They don't have that. But if they have Gray's able to do a lot of that stuff, and then they have better a better tackle situation than Kubiak did, at least in those first few weeks, while Fuaga was getting kind of his feet under him playing left tackle last year. And then Darnold just has to again like do what he did for the Vikings essentially. Like
Yeah.
things fell apart for the Saints last year when McCoy and Ruiz got hurt and their offensive line was hurt and it all fell apart.
Hmm.
So I think there's a floor to what the Seahawks offense can be. I don't think there's a floor for the Bengals defense. So
That's fair.
I would vote to put Seattle at 17 and Bengals at 18.
I think that's
Um,
fair.
all right.
That feels right.
So now here in this tier, we have a lot of similarities. We both have the Raiders in this tier, the Cardinals in this tier, the Bears, the Patriots are all here. Um, Talk to me about who you want to bang the table for, maybe for next up.
Sorry, you cut out. I don't know if my internet's being weird, but you froze for a second.
All good on my end. Who do you want to bang the table for here at 19?
At 19?
Hmm.
I mean, oh, do you mean if I want to fight for the Raiders there?
Or anybody? Who do you want to talk about? Who you want there?
Let's go with the Cardinals because I think they're going to be, even though I had the Raiders above them, but
I mean, I actually have the Cardinals above the Raiders anyway, so
yeah,
this
yeah.
won't be too hard.
The Cardinals I wanted to put higher because I keep referencing the games where they were really competitive with good teams, and I keep referencing the fact that I think they can be really good this year. Um, but the reason I dropped them down into this tier was because they were top 10 in red zone touchdown percentage by opponents. And what that stat for me tells me is that they gave up a lot of yards, they let teams get down there, and they had good red zone defense. And I think that's hard to sustain for another year. I think that they weren't like completely dominant on defense, and they're pretty young defense, even though I kind of view them as a team that overperformed defensively last year. And so I think that we could expect a little. It wouldn't surprise me, I guess, for a little bit of a drop off defensively, and I think Kyler's still a bit of a wild card in terms of whether this offense is going to run perfectly all the time. That being said, I think in this tier they're a little bit more. Um, I think they're set up for success a little bit better than the Raiders, but I don't know. I had the Raiders higher, and I like the Raiders. Now I want the Raiders here. I don't know, Simon. I don't know.
I'm gonna help you decide. I like the Cardinals. I have them just above the Raiders, just because the talent's a little bit better. I think they filled
Yeah,
out the roster a little bit more,
yeah,
being in year three of this regime rather than year one for the Raiders. You know, the Raiders, this was about
right.
get the coaching staff, get the quarterback, get the superstar playmaker, so your offense is in good shape. This defensive roster though is tough, right? You know, they're trying to get guys out of the building more than they're trying to get guys in the building, right? They released Christian Wilkinson. They traded the corner to the Eagles. Was it Corey and Bennett? I can't remember which corner it was. They traded one of the
Yeah,
corners that was like it was already a thin corner room. Like
right, right.
I expect Carroll to like give this team between Carroll and Crosby and Patrick Graham. This defense will have a floor to it, but it's going to struggle. It's not a great roster. So
Yeah.
the Cardinals, meanwhile, were doing fun stuff last year and they actually added some talent on the defense this year, both by way of veteran free agent signings and drafted talented players. So I'd like that. So we're going to put the Cardinals above. And like you said, Kyler, uh, 2 years removed from the knee injury now. So
Yep.
he will hopefully, maybe that ceiling won't be there, kind of like a Trevor Lawrence, but maybe he could just be more consistent this year. That should help the passing offense, hopefully. So
For
if we got
sure.
the Cardinals at 19, are we doing the Raiders at 20?
I think that makes the most sense.
Love Carroll, love Geno Smith, Brock
Yep.
Bowers, Ashton Genty, Max Crosby, like we've talked
Yep.
about it.
Yep.
Um, it feels so weird, Josh. I feel like teams get more and more competent every single year. So it hurts to have the Raiders down here at 20. But
Yes.
it's like we made the case for 19 other teams that are going to be really good at stuff. And I think the Raiders are just going to be like pretty good at everything.
Yep.
And you know what? I
We
think they'll be
talked
happy
about
with that.
we talked about the new regime plus Geno Smith coming back in. Like this is the stabilizing season for the Raiders, and they probably have a ceiling that they could get into the playoffs. They could sneak in. They could sneak in at the 7 seed, but I don't think I don't think we're thinking that they could be anywhere near contention for anything. So that
Yeah.
I think this is a safe spot for them.
Make the case for the Cowboys to still be in this third tier and not drop them all the way down like I did when they traded Michael Parsons.
So my fun stat from 2024 was that Dak Prescott only played 8 games, and so I
Good
am
stat.
counting on this. What's that?
Good stat. Another good one.
No.
You're on a roll.
They don't have Micah Parsons. Yes. No, I just think that this offense has a potential to be really fun to watch. It's kind of like in some ways I think they can be like a third tier of the Bengals offense. That's why they're lower than the Bengals. Like I think they'll be really productive. They could be really productive on offense and win some shootouts. Whereas, their defense though, I think is at best inconsistent. I think but because of its inconsistency, I think they will have some decent games where they win the turnover battle, where they do some nice things. I'm not saying that their defensive unit is going to be great overall, but I think that dropping them below 24, I don't think they're a bottom third team yet. I don't think they're a bottom third team yet. And so I wanted them up here um, because I think that their offense could be exciting and their defense, while it won't be great, I think the word I chose was inconsistent because I think they'll have some moments. And if they have, and so in other words, I'm predicting enough moments on defense to keep them competitive enough in certain games. So I'm actually more staunchly in the camp of the Dolphins now, oddly enough, to stay in this tier because you
There's not a
also
chance. There's not a chance.
what
There was zero chance. The
as
Dolphins
this
are I'm doing my talking out of both sides of my mouth, and I just know this team is going to be horrible this season. And if we had a
okay,
real
but
producer, I would say you can clip this and post it on social media. But I'm that person, so I'll clip it and I'll make a fool of myself instead.
so
Um, I
I
believe in
had
zero in the Dolphins.
what's that?
I, I believe zero in the Dolphins. I think they will be the worst team in the league this year.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I think it's over. I think it's
So
like 3 games.
what if I told you that I don't think you're entirely wrong, but as the season starts, are they really in that bottom tier
Yeah, yeah.
with proven offensive weapons and listen who's healthy on their defensive front? Chop
Okay.
Robinson, Bradley Chubb, Benito Jones, Jalen Phillips. Don't you think they could have some early moments before everyone gets hurt again?
No, because Brandon Chubb and Jalen Phillips have never been healthy at the same time for more than like a week. Um, I don't care about Benito Jones. No offense, Benito. And like those guys aren't going to be able to do anything because the defensive backfield is so bad that's not going to
Yeah.
even matter if they can get
Okay. All
to the
right.
quarterback or not. And their best player doesn't even want to be there. He's pulling the James Harden,
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler. Like he's trying to get traded right now. I think that team's in the toilet. So I'll play whatever card I need to keep the Dolphins out of this tier. But here's the thing with the Cowboys. You spoke to my heart because you know the answer to keeping them up here is just saying Dak Prescott because and you were very charitable to the
Yes.
defense. This might be the worst defense in the NFL this season. Like there's a real chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you listen to Jerry Jones, they'll stop the run because of Kenny Clark, and that'll solve
That's right.
everything.
That's right. That's
But
what they needed. They didn't need Micah Parsons. They needed
I,
Kenny Clark.
I will, I will say Trayvon Diggs. He is active now. He's off the injury report. He's back
Yep.
practicing and doing all that, so that's good.
Didn't they extend
Um,
to Ron Bland too? I said inconsistent. I didn't say
they
they were
gave
going to be
Deron
good.
Bland $90 million because they didn't want to give Michael Parsons twice that, even though he's worth four times that. Um, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Tyler Guyton's healthy right now, so this offensive
Yep.
line is young and it's unproven,
George
but I like the
Pickens.
way it's projecting. A head coach, play caller slash OC in Schottenheimer, who we don't know if he's going to be a good head coach, but he's calling the plays and he's called plays for really good Dak Prescott seasons before.
Yep.
When I look at my 21 through 24, which viewers on YouTube can see right here, I know it's gross. I know it's pretty disgusting actually. I'm the only person who believes in the Jets right now. So yeah, let's put the Cowboys at 21. Forget about it. I'm fine with that. Let's do it. Cuz But now
I
here's the
almost
case
got
for the Jets. Now here's the case for the Jets. I don't want to talk about the Cowboys anymore. I don't want to do it. I've done it enough. Here's the case for the Jets. This defensive roster is essentially the same that it was 2 years ago when they were really good. Aaron Glenn is a good defensive coordinator who's coordinated top 10 defenses with way less talent. And they have the bones of a team that could be a really good run team. Now, we don't know if it's actually going to happen, the run game. The defense, we have to see if Glenn is the right guy to inherit this Sala roster and be a good defense. And Elijah Vera Tucker just announced today triceps injury. He's probably going to miss the whole season. So that offensive line, which is young and we're pretty excited about, it's already
Yep.
being eaten into from a talent perspective. But that's the case for the Jets, and I think there's still a case for them to stay in this tier somewhere.
Yep. I will give my fact that I still have hope for Justin Fields. I'll give you the Jets up here since clearly I'm not going to get the Dolphins up here. But if you're going to give me the Cowboys in here, then I will. I'm glad I didn't say my Cowboys. Um,
Oh no, man,
my
you're it's your 49ers all day.
my fun stat for the Jets that they were 27th in opponent's average drive time. But I wanted to bring that up because you mentioned their defense is largely similar to what it was last year. And they were good last year. They were just on the field too much. So if they can
Right.
muster up some more production on offense, and if I'm going to be a self-proclaimed believer in Justin Fields for one more year, then yeah, they deserve to be in this tier, assuming they can get enough offense going to give their defense a chance to get rest so that they can make plays. So I'm with you on that.
The other teams we have in this tier right now between the two of us, we both have the Patriots, we both have the Bears, and I have the Titans. But all these three teams, it's projecting for the young quarterback.
Yep.
So I'm comfortable with between Ben Johnson, Drake May, Mike Vrabel, and Caleb Williams. I'm comfortable going leaning Patriots Bears and kicking the
Sure.
Titans out of the tier. Also because I don't love the Titans head coach, obviously. Um, but I wanted to give the Titans some love because
Yeah.
this is a nice defense still. It's got some questions, but it's still a nice defense. And I do think Cam Ward's a stud, but I just wanted to show them some love, get them here. You have the Patriots well above the Bears. I had them back to back. I'm comfortable going with the Patriots over the Bears. We all know the
Perfect.
cases for both teams. The thing I think is understated between these two teams and the four main units is the Bears' defense is being coached by Dennis Allen, and the defensive roster is nice.
Yeah.
I'm nice. And Dennis Allen, say what you will about him as a head coach, he's a sweet, sick defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So this defense could be really, really good.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm comfortable with the Bear or with the Patriots being above the Bears if that's still what you want.
Yeah, I'll take the Patriots above the Bears. I'm too high on Drake May this year to put him below. But as
Are
long as
you
they stay in this tier.
are you in the Patriots to the playoffs camp this year, or are you in the still a year early camp?
So they're right on the border for me.
Mm,
I'm in the Patriots will finish second in the AFC East camp. But
I like that.
that could be 9-8 and be the
Right.
ninth best team in the AFC. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think I think they'll outclass the Dolphins and the Jets throughout the course of the whole season, but they may not quite get to the playoffs. So they're right on the
Should
fence there for me.
should note Christian Gonzalez. I don't think is practicing right now. I think hamstring on him. I think I saw that
Oof.
this
Rough.
evening. So TBD. Pay attention to that when you're making your bets and looking for games on week one. So here is our next tier here: the Seahawks, the Bengals, um, Cardinals, Raiders, Cowboys, Jets, Patriots, and the Bears. So
The
that is
Bears.
our 17 through 24. Let's get to our final tier, and it's always famously the tier once we get to this part of the podcast, Josh, that we just kind of we usually pick one weird team that we want to argue about once we get to the final like 8, 9, 10 teams. Um, Maybe it'll be the Dolphins, but we kind of already did that.
Yep.
But here we are. So this is what we both had. I had the Cowboys here right on the brink. You have the Titans in this group. You had the Jets. I have the Dolphins here, obviously.
Yep.
Who do you want to bang the table for to be the winners, the best team in this bottom tier?
Oh boy. I mean, I had the Giants here, and I said that I wanted to bury them, but the truth is their defense could be okay. Like their front seven's
Yes,
not
I agree.
terrible.
I
And
yes,
so
I
with
wholeheartedly
the
agree.
with the boring stability of Russell Wilson, could they be middle of the road as a ceiling? Kinda, maybe. Like it's not exciting, but that's how I got them to 25. Um,
I kept finding myself wanting to put the Giants higher. And then yeah, I remember Russell Wilson as the quarterback, and I watched that. I watched that. I know what it is.
yep.
I'm not here for it. Which is really upsetting because it's a really fun team pretty much everywhere
Yeah.
else. That's not quarterback.
And I also wanted to move the Falcons up because I think that Michael Penix is exciting and I think their offense could be exciting. But then the stat I looked up was interceptions. He threw 3 picks and 3 TDs in 3 games, and he's such a gunslinger, which is fun to watch. But they don't have the defense to overcome mistakes by a young, growing quarterback. And so I think I couldn't move the Falcons out of this tier. So I don't need them at the top of this tier either. I think we could argue the Titans here with
Hmm. Hmm.
give them the fun, exciting new quarterback. They should have a good defense. Like I see they have a decent offensive line. I see no reason why the Titans can't lead this tier, and we will say, yeah, we called it. We didn't bury them initially.
And I will of course take the majority of the credit on that one. Um,
Of course.
Real quick before we anoint our winner of the bottom tier, one more ad here, Box Score Network. Because CONCACAF, Dom and Andy break down the League's Cup, including Seattle's historic trophy and Miami's full villain transformation, plus a preview of the international window with friendlies for the U.S. men's national team and World Cup qualifying. So if you're still wondering, hey, what's happening in soccer as we get to the fall, check out Because CONCACAF wherever you get your podcasts. All right. Yeah, I like the Titans. I like putting the Titans at the top of this group. I think
Really?
this is a solid defense. Like I said, I'm really excited about Cam Ward. I think that offensive line. Ooh, get the Dolphins out of here. I don't want them.
Oh, little
Freudian
Freudian slip there.
Freudian slip. Get out of here, Freud. Don't know what's going on there. Uh, yeah,
And
let's
then
get the Titans up here.
I think let's keep the Falcons at
Yeah.
26. I like when we had teams in the exact same spot. That's pretty cool. So let's
Yep.
keep them there. And then we can do Giants at 27 maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm good with that. With Falcons, I agree with you. I love their offense. I think the defense is going to be very bad once
Yeah.
again because all they did to add to the defense was draft a couple of edge rushers who I didn't even love coming out, and they're going to count on those guys big time. So I don't love
Yeah.
that. Um, Giants versus Panthers. That would be my last real conversation because my bottom four teams are shaping up to be our bottom four teams here.
Yeah.
Um, talk. So I agree with you on the Giants. Like I said, I said everything I need to there. I think the offensive line. Somebody's hurt again. Somebody got hurt again. I think. Anyways, whoever it was, but
On
Marcus
the
Mbow
Giants
is
O
a
line?
guard. Yeah, Marcus Mbow at guard, who I think was even getting some run at tackle in the preseason. Like, uh, I kind of like him. If he ends up playing at any point, I think that might actually be okay. Um, and the defensive backfield, they add Javon Holland and Paulson Debo, two moves I like. So I think all around they've really helped themselves. It is just that quarterback situation.
Yeah.
But the Panthers, Ted McMillan, um, another year of trying to give Bryce Young every opportunity. But I
Yep.
believe Ekamakwanu is hurt right now, and although my guy Brady Christensen's probably going to play, I love that. But the defense is the main thing for the Panthers. I think this is going to be another bottom five defense. I think I've counted all of my bottom five defenses on this show.
Yeah.
Falcons, Bengals. Uh, who else did I mention? Panthers
It's
just now,
Cowboys
the Cowboys. That's
and the
four,
Dolphins.
and the Dolphins. Those are my bottom five defenses, I think. So there we go. So talk to me, Panthers versus Giants.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I wrote that their fun stat was that they gave up over 31 points per game last season, one of the worst defenses. So
It's
they're
really
only
bad.
can really go up from there, I guess. But that's not true necessarily. I mean, I don't think Mayrig on his own is going to improve this defense. I don't think
And a
there's
couple of
enough
like
there.
veteran run stuffers, but yeah, no like impactful like a good second corner or like an edge rusher. Like they got the rookie edge rushers, which I like, but like not necessarily going to help your pass rush in week one or year one for those guys. And then you got a safety and some run stop and DTs. Nice, but like it's not gonna. I don't think it takes you from 32 to 23. I think it takes you from like 32 to 30 or 29, which still puts you in
Right.
that window of really bad.
Right. And I know we kind of talked up Bryce Young this off season as like he showed some signs, like he kind of improved a little bit.
Be careful with the
But
we.
okay,
Using that pretty liberally there. We.
but also it was after he got benched and came back, and like it's not like necessarily the growth that you're looking for, and he still has to prove it again this year in many more games. So I my gut's telling me Giants pretty easily here
Yeah,
over the Panthers,
I like that.
unless you're fighting for them.
I have a
Um,
lot more questions about the Panthers, right? Bryce Young, I know the defense is bad.
yes,
Giants, I guess even with Russell Wilson, it's more like I know there's a ceiling, but maybe the floor is it's not quite as bad as even the floor for the Panthers offense could be. And we know the Panthers
right,
defense is going to be worse. So yeah,
right,
Giants and Panthers.
yep.
And I win, Josh. As long as I can get my bottom four as my bottom four, I'm always happy on this show. And I'm going to gift you something. I'm going to gift you the
Okay.
Dolphins at 29, staying out of the bottom,
Wow,
staying out of the
wow.
30s. How do you feel about that?
You're a scholar and a gentleman to keep my Dolphins out of
Your
the bottom
Dolphins.
three. When they start 4-0, Simon.
Here's the other thing about this show, Josh, that we get to tell people, and it's not the 2 hour, 15-minute mark. We've done a great job. So
We
people are
have.
still hopefully here listening and watching. Um, Even when they start 4 and 0, you know what we're not going to do? We're not going to put them in the top five.
No,
We're
we're
not
not.
going to overreact. We'll put them at
They'll get to the next tier though,
they'll
won't
get
they?
to the next page. We'll put them at 22. We'll be
22.
respectful.
Yes.
I was looking
Where
at
I
some of
had them
our
this week.
well, look at what a pull. The lore. When I was looking at some of our notes from last year, I saw in our last ranking, our 4.0 in December, the Rams moved up like 7 spots into the top six for us or something like that because we were still pumping our brakes on the Rams all season because we were worried
Yeah.
about the defense. We knew, and
Yep.
like that was around, remember in like November, what was that game? There were some weird Stafford games in November where we thought he might have been hurt. It was
Yeah.
that shootout with the Vikings, right? There was a shootout with the
Yes.
Vikings, but then like 2 weeks went after that, and he was all things were weird. So like
Yes.
we were hesitant on the Rams for most of the season until like the end of the year run came. Then we were like, now we're in.
Yep.
We would rather be a little late than a little early on this show.
100%. 100%.
All right, so we've got the Dolphins here. So I think we'll put the Colts at 30. I think this is another sneaky like this could actually be a really good defense, which sucks that the year they're finally going to
Yeah.
get their defense figured out. Daniel Jones is their quarterback, and that just puts you at 30 when Daniel Jones is your quarterback.
Yep.
Um,
And
Anything else for you on the Colts?
no, I just said it's a disastrous plan in place, and I
Yeah,
just want
great.
the front office to see that. You know who was 6-5 as a starter last year? Anthony Richardson. He was 6-5. That's all I'll say.
I know
I know
for all
he's
the like all the rigmarole we've had with Anthony Richardson, like they've won half the games he's ever played in,
yep.
and they've never even put like an
And he's
Anthony
had
Richardson
and
offense
he's
in
had some
place.
game-winning drives. Yes, I know he's all over the place. Yes, I know he can't do it consistently, but why are you not trying to make it better with him? I don't understand.
I don't know. We
We
don't
don't
need to
care.
do all that tonight. I wish we could, but we're not gonna. Um,
I'm actually gonna change it up here at the end. I'm gonna give you the Browns at 32 because I just looked at my
you have to.
analysis for the Browns and it's just a question mark. So
It's the Browns ceremonial 32 place, 32nd
yes,
place ranking.
yep.
Um,
My fun
I'm
stat.
sure they've held the most amount of time at this spot in our rankings since we've done this show.
Yep.
So It's theirs until it's not.
Yep, my analysis was a question mark, and my fun stat was that only 4 of their 14 losses last year were by single digits or less, or single digits. So 10 of their 14 losses were by double digits, and a lot of them blowouts. Gross.
They're real bad. And listen, I've heard cases about like, listen, the defense was good 2 years ago. Like maybe it'll be good again. Martin Emerson's hurt. Denzel Ward is still great, but like he's the only defensive back you can count on for them right now. Greg Newsome is a player I like, but he's playing on the outside really for the first time in his NFL career, so we have to see. And
Yep.
they just never have gotten a consistent number two across from Myles Garrett. The one year they had it with Jadeveon Clowney was the year their defense was a top five defense. So like, and all their DBs were healthy that year. So I just don't think we're there right now.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, here that's our bottom tier. Then Titans, Falcons, Giants, Panthers, Dolphins, Colts, Saints, Browns. As a quick recap, here's everything: 1 to 16. These are your teams. I'm not gonna do the thing where I list every single team in the NFL again, especially now that this is on YouTube. People can literally look at it. Josh, what stands out to you? What's from this 1 to 16? What's one team that gives you the biggest reaction, whether it's positive or negative?
Positive or negative?
Hmm.
Um, I think that I kind of want to say the Bucks. I was so down on them a couple of years ago, but I think what I'm going to highlight is how high we still have the Texans. Because
Hmm.
I know initially you had
Hmm.
them at 6 and I had them at 9, so they weren't on the first graphic, but I was very close with you on that. And I think that that says a lot because of how great their defense is and how the
Yes.
work that D'Amico Ryans has done with that crew. Because I've said it before, like they outplayed the Chiefs in a lot of facets in the playoffs last year. They lost for a number of different reasons, and the Chiefs are a better team. I get that, but the Texans are right there. And Stroud had such a down year. I think, he had worse stats in almost all the categories, and he played in 2 more games than he did the previous year. And he got sacked 16 more times. He had such a down year, but because of this defense, like we're not stressing too much. And
Right.
we've talked about their offensive line all ad nauseum. We don't need to go into it now, but I just feel like we're still really high on the Texans, and I also don't feel like that's crazy either. So that it's a weird surprise to me, but I feel like every time I look at them, I'm like, I don't know if they're there. I don't know if they're there. And then every time we talk, they're knocking on the door of being a contender. And so I just think we really need to cheer for the Tex. I mean, you can't because you're an AFC team, but I can cheer for the Texans to get to the Super Bowl, and face off against my Vikings. So I think that's what I'll do because I want people to see what we're seeing here because I know that they're a really good team and it just yeah, I don't know. That stands out to me because I feel like they're a team that we should have dropped but I also we can't drop them. They're too good.
Yeah.
So,
Here's the difference with them versus the Broncos versus the Vikings versus the Steelers versus the Seahawks. The teams that I kind of think are the top defenses. The defenses and the Ravens are like right there after that. So I'm strategically cutting it off, and I guess the Eagles too. But when
yeah.
it's these teams that aren't the elite teams, the cream of the crop, top four teams that like we know are the
Right.
best teams in the league, they have a quarterback that we know can be a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah.
JJ, Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers, Bo Nix, like there's ceilings on those guys for right now, at least
Right.
as we know of. But CJ Stroud is the quarterback as a top 10 quarterback on a team with an elite defense. That's going to keep them up high.
Correct.
But I agree with everything you said. Here is the bottom half here. The thing that stands out to me, the team I'm kind of like watching for this year, can they really move one way or another? I mean, obviously, like the Bengals, like if
Yeah.
they can get that defense to 23, if it's they move to a much simpler defense. And I saw someone the idea of a defense playing more simple and playing faster is already been so overused that now we're making fun of it on Twitter. Which is great. I love Twitter, man. I love sports Twitter. I love the cycles that we go through. It's the same thing as it was in 2016. It's brilliant. But now we're making fun of the idea of like make defense simple and make it fast. But like literally if they do that and they're just mediocre, like not even average, like if they're a
Right.
mediocre defense, they could win 12 games this year.
Yes.
So that's the team that obviously I'm looking for if
Yep.
they can climb this year or not. But there it is, 1 to 32. Josh, we did it in 90 minutes. Looks like this new format might work out here. Um,
That's awesome.
if you're an audio listener, the Power Ranking Show has been the most popular audio version of the podcast. Um, I would love to hear the feedback on how, like, if this really worked versus didn't work. I mean, hopefully an hour shorter was nice for you guys than it has been in the past. Um, obviously you don't get the graphics, but we still, I think, mentioned every team. We didn't do the thing that some of these like audio and visual shows do, where we only talk about five of the teams because you could technically see the other ones, and but we still talked about them all. And then if you're on YouTube, drop a comment. Tell us how you liked it. It's a different version than it's been in the past. If you want to go compare and contrast, go check out the Simon and Friends audio podcast feed and go listen to a show from last year. Those are also good. Just carve out, 2 to 2.5 hours of your day to go do that. Again, check out Box Score Network. Check out all the pods. We're all gearing up for the NFL season. Check out the YouTube page. A lot of fantasy content coming on there as well. This season, that's new for us, as well as stuff from this show and other shows on Box Score. Um, Josh, thank you again, man. As always, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. It was a
Um,
blast.
we will be back in 1 month to do this again. We'll update everybody on how the first 4 weeks of the season that go. And who knows, maybe we have to tear this whole ranking up and start over. But we will be starting from this ranking. And again, it's not going to change dramatically. Um,
The Dolphins are going to get up to 22. I'm calling it right now.
Okay. I will make sure that doesn't happen. We only used one playing card, so I'll make sure that doesn't happen next time. All right. Until then, until next time, everyone enjoy the games. Enjoy week one. Have a blast. Enjoy yourselves. We will talk to you all next week. So, everyone, thank you. Have fun and be safe out there.